Well, hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking at research ethics in social sciences, which is the final week we have to cover before the final exam, which is nice. So let's get into it. Uh, to ensure scientific quality, every phase of research must strictly adhere to the ethical values. Ethics serves as the foundation of professional and human morality, examining what is good and bad and establishing rules to guide behavior. Now, there is a strong distinction between morality and ethics. Now, morality is coming from local and societal values, so they are prone to changing based on the location that you're growing in. Maybe your culture, maybe something else, okay? But in this case, ethics is grounded in universal human values. They direct institutions and professionals. So it doesn't really go to I think or my culture thinks, but it directly goes to okay, ethics says this is bad because it's a violation of human rights or similar things. Now, looking at the professional impact of this, if you violate scientific ethics, it may not always be legally guiltifying or guilty. You may not be always legally guilty, but it will result in you getting excluded from your professional community, and also it will lead to you losing your public reputation. So, this is why you must adhere to them, even though laws dictate that this is legal. So, there are multiple sources of ethics. It evolves from primitive communities to modern information societies out of necessity of coexistence. These principles are rooted in religious teachings, lived experiences, and legal systems. Now, I hope this will not be asked in the exam, but it should be quite easy to deduct. So, in order for a community to be able to work together and to strive, they need to be able to work together. And they make sure that they are able to work together by putting in place ethical rules. So, there are multiple teachings of Jesus, for example. Jesus says, "Do for others what you want them to do for you," in the Bible. And according to Confucius, "Do not do to others what you would not want done to yourself." And they form historical ethical foundations. Of course, there's Kant and other philosophers as well, but they chose to include only Jesus and Confucius. So, freedom and responsibility. Confucius says that freedom is the liberty to make choices, and responsibility, and sorry, freedom means having the liberty to make choices and accepting the consequences. So, liberty to make choices while assuming the responsibility for those decisions. There are five core ethical principles. The first one of those is virtue, which is the heart of ethics. It defines individuals who can distinguish right from wrong, acting fairly, and thinking rationally. So, a true scientist must be inquisitive, highly objective, and capable of assuming responsibility for their research. So, to reiterate, virtue is distinguishing right from wrong, acting fairly, and thinking rationally. Justice, on the other hand, is your fairness. It's internalized behavior. Fairness must be internalized as a constant behavioral trait, such as giving equal allowance to children. So, even from birth, or as a parent, you should be just in your day to day life as well as your scientific life. So, for example, in the US, the Red Line case, the Federal Communications Commission ruled that media organizations must present opposing views rather than just a single perspective, which leans into objectivity, which requires maintaining equal distance from all sides and reporting based strictly on evidence. For example, reporting an earthquake objectively requires putting emotions aside and deeply broadening the research to show both positive and negative aspects. Now, this is a horrible example, in my opinion, because, I mean, what could come out of an earthquake that is positive? Oh, a lot of buildings got torn down. This is a good thing. Everyone fucking died, so we can now make better buildings. Yeah. Truthfulness or accuracy requires consistency between what people say and how they behave. When you approach topics from a two sided perspective, it builds your public credibility and fulfills professional responsibility. So, in general, the main thing is that you need to be objective, rational, and fair. These three things actually define the general ethical principles. So, if you see something in the exam that does not align with these, it's obviously the answer. Responsibility links individual actions to societal standards. For a scientist, the freedom to produce knowledge without hesitation is the necessary cost of the immense responsibility they bear. So, let's look at ethical violations in scientific research. Maintaining research ethics enhances a study's credibility and the researcher's reputation, yada yada yada. We may look into the bodies, which is Association of Information Systems and the Turkish Academy of Sciences, categorize several severe ethical violations. In the first section, we have data misconduct, which is the first one is fabrication. What is fabrication? You generally make up fake data. It's the source is basically nowhere to be found. It's just what you thought of at the time. Why would you do this? Because you want to publish something and you don't have resources, for example. So what do you say? You go out and you straight up lie to prove your point. This is fabrication. Whereas when you have not done anything, it does not come from any actual research. For example, presenting unconducted questionnaire results as genuine. Whereas falsification is deliberately distorting or manipulating the data to achieve a specific desired result, like altering numbers, ignoring unsupportive hypotheses, or tweaking public opinion research to satisfy a sponsor's expectations. So you are not actually not doing anything and just fabricating results, but you are falsifying the results of the experiment that you conducted. Maybe you are tweaking some of the numbers, maybe you are just not doing anything, you know? You are manipulating the data to support your view. Plagiarism, on the other hand, is publishing someone else's methods, texts, or tables without proper citation or paraphrasing their ideas without giving credit. So you learn something from one source and then you say it louder without giving credit to the original author. This is plagiarism. And this is something this is a big issue in the scientific space. This is detectable via tools like Turnitin. Duplicate publication is republishing the exact same article or book in a different venue without editor permission. Well, by saying republishing the exact same article or book in a different venue without editor permission, it's basically saying that if you do not have permission from the original editor that has originally published your works, so when you're publishing something, you go to the editor who looks at your paper, who peer reviews it, and then says, okay, this is a very important piece of science, and then decides to publish it in his journal. Now, if you go to a second editor without permission from the first editor and then submit the same work that you have done before with editor A, and if they do decide to publish it, then what happens is, first of all, you would be going into copyright infringement, because when you publish something, when you give your work to a publisher, editor A technically has the rights to all of the text in your research paper. So you're not, yes, you are the author of it, but you cannot really go out and print everything without any permission, because that guy legally owns everything that you've written. So if you go to editor B without knowledge of editor A, you would be selling the same thing to editor B as well, while making it illegal. So if you get permission from editor A saying, okay, I'm going to be republishing my work with editor B, and they say, okay, go ahead, and then editor B also knows about this, they will say, this was originally published in this year, but we are republishing it because it was such a great research. And this makes it okay for you to be able to actually publish it again or reprint it. So I hope that clears it up a bit. Salami slicing is when you undermine a study's integrity by dividing one comprehensive piece of research into multiple, least publishable to artificially boost publication counts, like publishing each chapter of a single thesis as a separate article. So, you have this single research that you've done with all of its parts combined. Maybe you've reached several conclusions. But you, just to make more money, you decide to publish each part of it or each thing that you found with another publisher. But on their own, these things that you found are not actually that interesting, because they actually form the main thing when coupled all together. It's like a jigsaw box, but you are giving each piece of the jigsaw to another publisher, or you're re-releasing the jigsaw each year with things that don't actually make sense, which all ends up with the same research that you could have just published in the same year. But it didn't make sense until they've all been completed. Like, I don't really get this one, but I believe it's what it means. So, inflating publication output is by publishing texts that lack scientific originality or theoretical frameworks, like novels, solely to add them to academic dossiers. So, I think this is very self explanatory. You just publish shit that has no scientific value. It's bad. Failure to acknowledge funding, hiding financial or institutional support received from entities like Tubitalk or the EU. Like, for example, my sponsor comes to me and says, like, let's say they are, what brand are they? Let's say they're a phone brand, and then they come to me and they ask me, okay, we will sponsor your research if you make sure that our phone looks like the best phone out of all of them. Okay? So you make your research, you try to find a way to boost their phone, and you find out they emit like 0.1% less radiation per second than the other phones, or some other bullshit metric that does not actually have any significance to it. So when a reader first reads this, they're going to check if this research had any sponsors. And if they see that this research was sponsored by the phone company that you are advocating for, they will obviously say, okay, this guy has been paid by these guys, so they must be, in cahoots with each other. So I'm not going to be reading this study even more. But if you don't acknowledge that, someone may look at your research paper and not realize that it was sponsored. So they will be continuing to read it, they will peer review it maybe, they will check. Yes, I guess it does 0 point less rads out of the other phones. Okay, fine, I will buy this brand. See, I mean, it can be used like an advertising tactic. It's been done before. It will be done in the later as well. But don't do it. I guess they must state exactly who provided support and at what stage. Unjust exclusion slash inclusion, removing the name of a contributor who earned authorship or failing to mention technical assistance in the acknowledgments. So you have people who've worked on this research with you throughout the whole of the stages, but what happens is only you only put like the leads names into it. Like two people, you're the organizer and you have your friend Mahmoud and he helped you a little bit in organizing the studies, and you two are the only ones that are listed there. But in the background, 20 more people actually did the research with you. Now, I would be fucking pissed if someone did that. I would be very pissed. In fact, I would piss on the guy who did that. So, in order to not get pissed on, don't do this. I mean, it sounds like just being a dick move. All things considered, I don't know about ethics or anything, but this is just straight up horrible. Author order issues. If not mutually agreed upon, the person who developed the main idea should be listed first, followed by others based on contribution levels. As we learned before, it needs to be like the first guy who decided to conduct the study, and then the second guy who helped a lot with the study or revived it, and then the order of contribution. But if you put your name before the other guy who had actually started with the research, then again, it's not an ethical violation, it's just being a dick move. Oversighting is quoting excessively from sources, even with citations, is considered unethical. So you have a single source, let's say, and or you have, I don't know, 3 sources, but you just keep quoting from the same source just to drive your point. You found one guy that agrees with your idea, and then you just use his work to support your idea fully. You know, that's why it's bad. I mean, you find a single guy on this blue earth that supports your view, and then the whole research is spent just quoting that single guy instead of finding other studies that support your work. Honestly, it's you can see why. Citing from a citation using a secondary source instead of the original author. This pulls ideas away from their original intellectual context and creates superficial research. I don't know about superficial research, but this will be landing on the dick move that we have talked about earlier. Because instead of seeking out the original study that you found, that the author published, sorry, you're just taking the citation from another citation that cites that study. Like me, Azid, I say, okay, the sky is blue. Then a second guy comes in and then says, okay, Yeet has stated in one of his studies that the sky is blue in 2009. But the guy that is conducting a research on why the sky is blue, person C, goes and looks at person B's research and says, okay, this guy cited this guy, so I'm just going to cite this guy to that. So it says that he cited that. So he just says, person B has said that the sky was blue in 2011. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense why it's an ethical violation. Participant confidentiality, disclosing the identities of qualitative or quantitative research subjects. Researchers must guarantee that participants will face no negative consequences from their answers. But when you breach their confidentiality and then you say, okay, this guy, yeah, we did some tests on meth heads And this guy, Abdul Aziz Abu Bakr, who lives in and this street on number 7. Yeah, he's a goner, man. And then if you just say that, that guy's life is ruined. So don't do that. We don't breach the confidentiality of the people that have helped us with their study. So, the root causes of unethical conduct actually begin with the cultural upbringing and early childhood development. It's largely traced back to cultural upbringing and early childhood development. Children who do not experience fairness in their first 5 years struggle to translate moral values into their adult professional lives. For example, in Sweden, they classify or they put in the classrooms, they display slogans like cheating in class is equivalent to treason. They emphasize that early dishonest behavior scales into professional offenses. So, if you cheat in class, you should die. That's their whole message. They support. So, the main drivers of academic misconduct. The first number one is insufficient ethics training during scientific education. Number two is institutional pressure on academics to produce high publication numbers for promotions. I mean, sometimes there is absolute institutional pressure that makes it very hard for people to catch up with. Maybe even our university could be doing it, I'm not sure. But they just put so much pressure on researchers to pump out more stuff just so they can please the shareholders enough. So, I mean, people just have to resort to unethical methods to actually keep up with it and not get fired. Personal ambition overriding rational judgment. Uh, let's rephrase this to being a dick. Lack of merit and fairness in professional evaluation processes. Uh, I guess if you don't evaluate well, if the thing is marital or fair, then it will go through and academic misconduct will happen. I'm not sure. But to reiterate, insufficient ethics training, institutional pressure, personal ambition, lack of merit, and fairness. And in conclusion, scientists must continually engage in ethical self reflection while motivating their environments to do the same. Upholding the ethical perspectives across academia and society helps build a fair, objective, and democratic social order. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening to everything that I've spewed out. I hope your exams go well. If you are listening to this and you're not going to be attending an exam, cool. Thank you.